Throughput accounting and the bottleneck. Bottleneck is a very vital concept used in throughput accounting because throughput accounting aims to make short-term decisions for the organizations when there are certain limitations or constraints faced by the organizations. So understanding of the bottleneck is a very, very important concept. So let's have a look at what do we mean by the bottleneck. Okay, bottleneck resource refers to any department, machine, or function within the organization with lowest capacity, restricting other areas to be fully utilized. So, what do we understand here? Bottleneck could be any department or a machine or any function, like, for example, human resource function within the organization having the lowest capacity compared with other departments, other machines, or other functions. And because the bottleneck has lower capacity than the other departments or machines, therefore, bottleneck restricts other areas to be fully utilized. Okay, before actually I move into an organizational example, think I suppose you might have had a walk or jogging in the park with somebody. When I say somebody, I mean to say somebody really older than you or really younger than you. So if you have children and for example, you are walking with a 4 or 5 year old boy or a girl in the park, now the question arises is this. Now, do you have to keep up with the pace of the young children, or young children will have to keep up with the pace of yourselves? Well, if you are basically, you can run or jog 5 miles an hour, but the child can only run, let's suppose, 1 mile an hour. Question is, would you still run that fast and leave the child behind? No. Or maybe you can consider like you are walking with an elderly grandparent. So, of course, you may be young, maybe in mid 20s or 30s, and your grandparents are quite old. So, question is, in terms of the physical strengths, you will have to keep up with the pace of your grandparents. So it means even though you can run faster, but they will stop you. Okay, they will stop you. I don't know, you call it humanity, you call it a culture, you call it whatever you like. Okay, on compassionate grounds. Exactly the same way that if there are two machines within the department and one is slow and the other is fast, it's very difficult to keep up at the same pace. Now, let's move into the organizational example. How to identify a bottleneck within the organization? Well, there are two ways. Whichever you prefer, we will still be able to identify the bottleneck. Well, if all resources have equal capacity, then the resource with the highest usage or time in a product will be identified as a bottleneck. And secondly, if all resources have different capacities, then we will need to determine which resource generates lowest output among all. And the resource, can be a department, which can be a machine, which can be any function, which can generate the lowest output will be defined as the bottleneck. So let's have a look at an example. Let's have a look. A small textile company produces a dress in two departments with following details. So one is a cutting department, one is stitching. So a dress is cut first and then it is moved on to stitching and then it gets stitched. We are given capacity available in hours per month. So monthly capacity of cutting is 1000 hours and monthly capacity of stitching machines is 1200 hours. We are also given time per unit or time per dress in hours, that it takes 1 hour to cut a dress and 2 hours to stitch a dress. Requirement is identify which department is described as bottleneck resource. So we will try to find out which department has the lower capacity in comparison. So as we know, cutting department can cut 1000 dresses per month simply because 1000 hours divided by 1, that will give us 1000 units in a month. And if we look at the stitching department, it can it can stitch 600 dresses per month, 1200 hours over 2. So it means cutting department can cut 1000 dresses and stitching department can stitch 600 dresses. So which one is the bottleneck in your understanding? Yes, you are very right. As stitching department has lower capacity than cutting department, it will be defined as the bottleneck resource. Now, once we identified bottleneck resource being stitching, what are the implications? Implications you can probably understand that if you buy fabric for 1000 dresses, because cutting department can cut 1000 dresses per month, if you buy 1000 if you buy fabric equivalent to 1000 dresses and you cut all those 1000 dresses, then you transfer those 1000 cut dresses to the stitching department. Stitching can only stitch or process 600 units, leaving 400 units unstitched. And if the same happens next month, another 400 will be left unstitched. After 3 months, another 400. After 4 months, another. So, with the passage of time, it will be a pile of thousands of unstitched dresses in the stitching department. So, we may have to cut, we may have to close down the cutting department. That don't send us more because we still have a lot of backlog to clear. So, understanding is this: once we identify the bottleneck, please remember bottleneck dictates the decisions, meaning whatever the bottleneck will be able to do, we actually streamline all other departments to keep up with the pace of the bottleneck in order to ensure smooth and continuous flow of production. And this is actually in line with the just-in-time system.